Hello, my name is Clifford Ball, and have you ever visited the biggest tree in the world? Well, I have, and it was awesome. We visited the Giant Sequoia National Park, and it was incredible. It was beyond my expectations. Sequoia trees grow up to 300 feet tall, and they get about 29 feet wide. I've always wanted to see these trees since I was a little kid, around 6, 7, or 8. We planted a tree in our yard of the sequoia tree, and it unfortunately died the first year we had it. I just always wanted to see these trees and just see how big they. I just loved seeing how big they were and just how they looked. So, after years went by of us not really ever seeing one, we visited Sequoia National Park. Or I was excited to hear that my parents told us that we were going to go to Sequoia National Park for vacation, and I was really excited. So when we got there, it was beyond my expectation. It was incredible. The trees were incredible, and they weren't in big forests like I imagined. I imagined them being in a big forest. They weren't. They were actually in groves where you have to drive to the groves of trees. There's 32 groves located inside the park, so you have to drive to some of these and see how they and they're not just right next to each other either. They're like probably 20, 30 feet apart and in between other trees. There's other trees in there, but you'll see like one of these skinnier trees, and then all of a sudden you just see an enormous sequoia tree, which is like 29 feet in diameter, and the other ones are like maybe 4. And they grow up to 300 feet tall. We got to see the biggest tree in the world, General Sherman, and that one is the largest the largest mass of wood in the entire world. So it's got the most amount of wood in the world. It's the largest mass. We walked and we hiked to some other groves, and we saw the second largest one as well. But they also have a fireproof bark. That's the other incredible thing. They have the fireproof bark that protects them from the fire. And so when wildfires come, which are common in California, they come and they'll sometimes burn down the other trees. But the sequoia usually doesn't get burned down because the bark is actually fireproof to where it will repel most of the fires and the heat. And it also repels the mosquitoes and bugs and insects that try to live inside the sequoia. So that helps it live a longer generation or longer life. And when you go to the sequoias, you expect like a regular tree, but it doesn't even look anything like you imagine. It looks like something out of a storybook. It doesn't even look real. It looks like something someone would paint. It doesn't even it doesn't even look like a tree. And we got to take some pictures next to the tree, and when you stand next to the tree, it makes you look like a little ant compared to a person. Like if I showed you some pictures, it would just be you'd see the little tiny person, and then you see the tree. I can't explain that enough. We also got to drive through a tree as well. There is a tree, and it was cut out, and you got to drive through the tree, and that was pretty cool to know that our truck could go through a tree, and that was pretty cool. We got to take some pictures. Also learned that sequoias need fire to reproduce. So when the wildfires come along and like have fire, those big trees don't really die, but it burns the other trees to make way for new seedlings and new sequoias to grow from the sequoia pine cones. And we got to see how old and thick they are, to where how like they stop growing height-wise, but they kind of start growing width-wise. Like once they reach their maximum height of about 300 feet, which takes about a few thousand years to get that big. Like the oldest trees have been alive for 1,000 years. I guess they just keep growing. They just keep growing width-wise, so they just keep getting fatter and fatter and fatter. Then the the root system is very shallow. That's the main cause in sequoia deaths. So the number one cause is not fires, but it's sequoia deaths, where the wind or the root system's super shallow, which is incredible how big the tree is. It'll make the tree fall or topple and sway by the wind, which will make it fall down. So that's the number one leading cause in deaths. Also, it takes about, like, we saw some like in the 1880s they used to log the sequoia trees before it was a national park. They used to have a mill, and they used to log them and like cut down the trees and use them for grapevines and stakes for the grape trees that grow in California and other trees. So they would have to get a group of people to chop down the trees, and they would have mills inside of the park. Before it was a park, it would just be private land, and they would have mills, and they would have workers, and they would all just chop it down. It would take days. We saw a tree that took 9 days for 2 people to chop it down, because this tree is probably like 26 feet in diameter, and it goes all the way around. About, like, the girth of the tree is about 100 feet, so it goes 100 feet around the tree. We also got to see the Mark Twain stump, which was a stump in the middle of Sequoia National Park before it was a park, and they chopped it down for logging, but they actually have an artifact of it inside of New York City. I learned that from a park ranger who talked with. They chopped down the sliver of it so they could put it inside New York City. So I'm hoping I could maybe see that someday. And finally, I just reading about it more, I would say that it's definitely worth a visit to Sequoia National Park. If you ever wanted to visit, it's definitely worth it. It's incredible, and it's just beyond your expectations, I'd say. Thank you for listening.